I'm here in Worcester. Worcester was the place where the 3-year-old boy was allegedly attacked with acid whilst he was out shopping with his mum, and it's a story that's shocked people all over the UK. I'm here to find out more about acid attacks in this acid capital of the world and find out a little bit more about what's really going on. When Mark Van Dongen's dad walked into the hospital, he couldn't find his son. He asked the doctor where he was, at the rooms he'd just been looking in. The doctor told him his son was in room 1. His dad couldn't believe it. He'd already looked in there but didn't recognise his own child. Mark had suffered 25% burns to his body because of the acid that was thrown at him. He lost his left eye, his left ear, his left leg had to be amputated. His skin had to be surgically removed because it was so damaged. He was paralysed from the neck down. He was in agony from the itching, and the acid had burnt away into his bones. The man had no life at all. In September, Mark's girlfriend, ex-girlfriend now, Bellina Wallace, went out and she bought a 1 litre bottle of acid. So a litre looks like this. She removed the label and she researched acid attacks online and the effects of acid attacks. On the night of the 22nd of September, Mark Van Dongen made the fateful decision to stay the night at her flat. He awoke in the early hours of the morning and Bellina Wallace was stood over him holding the acid, and she threw it all over his face and his body. She was screaming, "If I can't have you, no one else will." Faced with the prospect of losing his voice as well, Mark could no longer endure the psychological and physical torture of his condition. He went to Belgium and he ended his own life with the help of euthanasia doctors. The euthanasia doctors said they had never known someone be able to endure a life of such torture and pain. One of the things about this acid that can be bought in these stores and makes you realise that as knives and guns are harder to get hold of, this becomes a natural weapon of choice. Also, if you get caught after you've thrown it, you haven't got it on you. And from a female point of view, if you use this, it doesn't involve actual blunt trauma or force. So you can see why this becomes a weapon that's widely used in the UK. So in order to make acid a bit harder to get hold of, the government have introduced regulations, like you have to have ID if you're going to buy acid online. Many stores actually have removed acid from sale, and stores also won't sell to anybody if you haven't got proof of ID. But despite this, and despite the government introducing an offensive weapons bill, it remains remarkably easy to get your hands on acid. So I've just Googled how to buy acid online, and after I've sifted through the kind of drugs ordering that you can also do online, I could get some LSD fairly simply if I wanted. I can order acid online right here. I can choose sulfuric acid. This is sulfuric acid at 98% concentrate. I can simply add that to my cart. A final total of what I'll be charged. This is for 1 litre of sulfuric acid at 98%. I'm going to pay £7.25, delivery of 9, go to checkout. Final, this is what I'll be charged. And then once I've just simply entered my address and checked my payment details, I can place my order. And the acid will arrive at my address in 10 working days. It took me, 30 seconds to order a litre of acid to my home address. And as much as we can talk about regulation and as much as I can understand how difficult this is to police, surely it has to be harder than this to get hold of something that could completely destroy people's lives. I'm here at a home bargain store in Worcester where an alleged acid attack on a 3-year-old boy in his stroller happened here in store. And you know, the really weird thing about being here and the weird idea that someone came in this place and attacked a woman and her child allegedly with acid is it's the most normal of settings. This place is the most benign of places. It's literally Normalville. And right here, a group of men decided to attack a woman, allegedly, with acid and caught her child instead. And the woman was just outside here being comforted by other shoppers and paramedics, screaming, "What have they done to my son? What have they done to my son?" This is an active and ongoing court case, so I have to be a little bit careful what I say. But the 6 men who have been alleged to be involved in this incident where acid was thrown on a 3-year-old boy will appear here at Worcester Crown Court later this month. One of those men is a 39-year-old Afghan asylum seeker. He can't be named for legal reasons, but he's the father of the 3-year-old boy involved in a suspected deliberate acid attack. Another of the guys is also an Afghan national, and there's 4 other men who have also been involved. They've been charged, and they will all be appearing here. All 6 men will appear here at Worcester Crown Court at the end of this month. And if I could ask them one question, I'd ask them, was it worth it? The UK has earned itself the dubious title of acid capital of the world. And the Acid Survivors Trust International confirms that the UK has the highest rate of acid attacks per capita anywhere on the planet. Unlike in other countries where victims are typically women, in the UK, most of the victims are men. And the suspects tend to be male as well. In 2016, 77% of suspects were men. It's also true that certain boroughs of London have a clear correlation between acid attacks and demographics. In the 3 worst affected boroughs, that would be Newham, Barking and Dagenham and Tower Hamlets, there is a high number of acid attacks and a very large population of Indian and Pakistani origin. And acid attacks in these countries are particularly common. But in reality, only 6% of the suspects in London in the last 15 years were Asian. 32% were white European, and 38% of suspects were Afro-Caribbean. And the same is true for victims as well. Over half the victims were white European, and around a quarter were Afro-Caribbean. In the UK, everything you know about acid attacks is likely to be untrue. The victims tend to be male, the perpetrators tend to be male, and the worst offenders are white Europeans or Afro-Caribbean. This graph shows acid attacks in London over time, so since 2010. And the number of attacks back in 2010 were about 300, and that number has changed slightly. It has gone up and it's gone down. But what's really alarming about this graph, and what it shows really well, is the trend. And the trend is on the up. In 2017, there were 465 acid attacks in London alone, and that's in just 1 year. And I think that's the truly terrifying thing, is that this trend doesn't show any sign of slowing down anytime soon. I've learned a lot about acid attacks while I've been here in Worcester. One of the things I've really noticed is that the government is cracking down. They are making it harder to get hold of acid in store, and they are also increasing the penalties for those found with it or using it. But what I think is our best defence, the defence we rely on against acid attacks, is to imagine they happen somewhere else. They happen to other people in other places, like in London, or just to someone else. And what I've realised being here in this super normal town filled with super lovely, super polite people is acid attacks don't just happen in London. Acid attacks happen in perfectly polite towns and cities too. And there's no reason acid attacks can't happen in a perfectly polite city near you.